and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish, and publish your book. I'm Mark Stay.
And I'm Mark DeVoe, and we'd like to thank all of our incredible supporters. That's every one of you listening to the show today, and all of our academates in the Bestseller Academy, who we absolutely love and are doing incredible things. If you're interested in starting, finishing, or writing from scratch that book, then join us at academy.bestsellerexperimentcom to find out how you can get accountability, weekly and monthly coaching, and an amazing community to be a part of. So, Mr. Stay, it has been quite the week, hasn't it?
I've had an interesting week. I have to tiptoe around this. A dream writing gig that I've been nurturing since 2015 might slip through my grasp this week. So I can't really speak about it yet. But and this ties in with our special guest this week, because your ability to cope with rejection, to ride out the storm with tenacity and hopefully a bit of dignity is something you have to cultivate. And sometimes it's about picking yourself up, dusting yourself off and getting on with it. Sometimes you have to kick and scream a bit, which is what I've been doing in my own mild-mannered way. I got some great advice this week, which was when negotiating with Hollywood, you have to stamp your foot till daddy buys you an Oompa Loompa. But unfortunately, that advice might have come a little bit too late, but it's a lesson learned for the future. But, you know, we've got a great guest next week who will talk about Hollywood, and there's a hell of a story there. And it's a place that will chew you up and spit you out, but it's I tell you what, it's fun though. I'd rather be chewed up and spat out than sitting there thinking about being chewed up and spat out.
Rather be on the roller coaster than watching the advert on TV, right?
Feeling nauseous.
But the other thing is, as we know, I mean, what are we, 4.5 years now into this podcast at least? I can't remember anymore. But we do know that there's always, in any good story, there's always an amazing twist, right? There's always an amazing plot twist, and there's often a happy ending. So who knows? Maybe this is the what do they call it? The resurrection? No, what's the hero's journey moment?
The resurrection. To be clear, this is not the new film. That's been one of the most wonderful experiences yet. This is a TV thing. But you know,
yet another massive opportunity in Mr. Stay's world, which is
I've been very, very lucky. I've got writer friends who've got all kinds of war wounds. You know, I know one writer who worked for Bob Weinstein, and the stories he can tell. You know, it's been a breeze so far. So it's at the very least I get a war story from it. So but Bryan Cranston said that, didn't he, about creating a great story down the road. But the other thing is, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I really believe in that. I think I think it's about hard work and combined with belief. I think everything changes. In fact, everyone listening out there, a little bit of pep talk. We haven't done a minute motivation for a while, have we? No. Goodness, you remember those in the years gone by? Yeah. But I really do believe. I was coaching about this week actually, and I love it. I remind myself of this constantly in my own life, but when I'm working with clients, it's great to see that moment where someone steps across that threshold of belief. So many people are on the other side of belief. They don't yet believe that they're good enough. They don't yet believe that something's going to happen. They don't believe they can write a good book or even finish a book. And yet belief has to start first. You have to kind of lead with belief before then things can happen. And I think the most crucial thing, I mean, even with the Academy, a lot of it's about really working on people's belief that they can do this, that they can actually make this happen. Because actually we'll hear a bit more about that in our interview today, but in terms of believing it's possible, you have to, no one's going to give you that certificate and say you're now a great author, you're now capable of doing X, Y, and Z. It's like, you've got to believe it first, because if you don't believe it, who's going to believe in you? I had to write an email this week, basically bigging myself up. And I'm normally quite mild-mannered and modest about stuff like this, but this was one time I thought, sod this, I'm not being coy. I'm actually gonna big myself up and say I'm actually pretty good at this, and I've done some good things, and I've got more good things on the go. So that was fun. Yeah, and it's hard, isn't it? Because it feels unnatural to do it in some ways, but there comes a point where you've got to stand in your own light and say, I've earned this.
Yeah.
I've spent, and it's, if someone's like waltzed in and they've it's the first time they've ever done anything, then they haven't really earned their war wounds or the spurs or the medals. But like, you've been at this writing stuff.
Yeah,
For
I mean, look,
how many years now? 30 years? 20, 25 years?
It is. Well, that's what I put in the email. I've been doing this for 30 years
half
now.
a lifetime.
And I mean, obviously, I'm speaking from the position. I'm a middle-aged white bloke. We've got it easier than anyone on the planet. But when I started out, my parents were cleaners. We lived on an estate. I didn't know anyone in the film industry. I put on my own plays to sort of I've been banging my head against this wall it's taken me a lot longer to get here. I wasn't someone's nephew, I didn't go to RADA or film school or anything like that. So it's been a journey. I've enjoyed it. I've loved it. But it does require a little bit of tenacity, whoever you are, I think. Absolutely. Some more than others.
Yeah, keeping the faith, absolutely. Well, we're going to hear a lot about tenacity in our incredible interview today, which we're going to dive into in a bit. But I just wanted to give people a little bit of a heads up. People we've had a few emails asking about when the Academy doors are going to open again. And we are going to be opening the doors reasonably soon. I can't give you a date yet, but what we've decided to do is create a pre-registration. So that's for people who want to kind of get in on the wait list early and actually get their registration in. It's a very short process, about 10 minutes, but we ask you about what your dream is. I mean, this is the whole point of the Academy, and I think the whole point people write a book is there's a dream, which is either about even just finishing that book is such a momentous milestone in people's lives. It's also a huge thing that I've noticed a lot of people is when they finish that book, they have a newfound confidence that they never ever lose. It's like you kind of level up, but you can never go backwards can you remember the first time you finished your first book, what that felt like, Mark? That kind of feeling that you got?
Well, I mean, I finished books when I was still at school. I wrote a terrible Star Wars meets Star Trek meets Battlestar Galactica ripoff, which I did finish, and it was terrible, but I finished it. So that was something. And of course, writing plays and getting them on stage, that was really something. That was getting other people to say words that I'd written, getting an audience to turn up for it. It does give you an amazing feeling, and it's a difficult step to take because you're putting your head above the parapet.
Yes.
It's no longer something in a notebook or stuck on a file on a laptop or whatever. It's out there in the real world. And once it's out there in the real world, you lose all control of it. It belongs to the audience now, or the readers or the viewers or the listeners or whatever medium you're putting out there. And I think after a while you reconcile yourself to that. You just think, okay, that was imperfect, but the next thing will be better. And that's just what you have to keep doing.
Yeah. And it's and one of the things that I've really been hot on recently is this idea that procrastination is trying to delay the fear of criticism or fear of rejection, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it, sometimes not that we don't want to write our book, it's that we don't want to finish our book, because when we do, we're going to be forced to get someone to read it, and then we might get criticized. So one of the things we're working on in the Academy is helping people get over this idea of procrastinating or worrying about criticism, because I say bring on the criticism, because for every one person that criticizes you, hopefully there's going to be 10 people that love what you do. And I always go back to these 1-star reviews. Biggest authors in the world have got more 1-star reviews than everyone else because they just have more people looking at their book. And so bring it on, bring on the criticism. But the idea is that we want to break down this idea of procrastination. Our life doesn't wait for us. The clock constantly ticks. We know that. And now is the day that we have to start or finish or work out what we're going to do about writing. And we're going to hear again from our interview about this idea of you've just got to get on and do it. So if that's you, if you're ready, if you're thinking enough of this messing around, this has been a dream of mine all my life, and I want to write this book. And I not just want to write this book, I want to write the very best book I'm capable of today, right? That's what the Academy is about. So if you want to get in, put your application in early. We do want to learn a bit about what your goal is and what it doesn't matter if you haven't even started writing a book. The point is that we want to know what your goals and dreams are as an author, so that we can help support those within the Academy. So go to academy.bestsellerexperimentcom to fill out the application form. It takes about 5-10 minutes, and then you'll be on the list. And it is we'll go through the list one by one, first come, first serve. So, but on that note, let's talk about somebody who took that initiative, Mark, because today's guest has an amazing story, and I think a lot of people are going to relate to this. A lot of new authors. Right?
Absolutely. It was an absolute joy to speak to Ellie Barker. Ellie is presenter for ITV West Country, also worked for BBC Look East, GMTV. She started as a runner, so that's where you work on the studio floor running, gopher, getting things, a mutual friend of ours started out like that, and he's now making documentaries and things. So, it's how you get into TV. But she's always been a fan of books. Her debut novel, The Pink Coffee Shop, was 10 years in the making. And she talks about having heard on this podcast the editor Scott Pack. Now, listeners, I'll put a link in the show notes. Scott was on the podcast on episode 252 talking about his amazing book, Tips from an Editor. Scott has also worked with Queve McDonald, friend of the podcast, and also a member of the BXB group on our Facebook group, and also Nicola May, major best-selling indie author who will be returning to the podcast later this summer. But it was great chatting to Ellie. We talk about rejection, working with editors, starting your own imprint, and much, much more.
Fantastic. So let's dive in and listen to Mark chatting with the lovely, bubbly, and joyful Ellie Barker.
Ellie Barker, welcome to the Bestseller Experiment. How are you today?
Mark Stay, thank you very much. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am tickety-boo, thank you for asking. And I love it. I love it, love it, love it. I love nothing more when one of our listeners drops us a line out of the blue and says, hey, I've done it. I've got a book out. What's even more wonderful is it's because of something you heard on the podcast. So what we're going to do, Ellie, we'll talk about how your writing career came about, your career in journalism and TV and all that exciting stuff. But you heard us talking to the wonderful Scott Pack. And how did that work out for you?
Okay. So, it is several. I have to say it because I'm quite overwhelmed actually to be on the podcast because I've been listening to it. I really am. I've been listening to it for a long time, and it's funny because I listened to some of your first ones, sort of with more traditionally published authors, and they're always very inspiring, just the whole writing process. And then when I was going through another round of rejections, I've been writing for 10 years, and I have genuinely lost count with the amount of rejections I've had, but then it's way into the 70s, I would say by now. And I was contemplating about self-publishing. I was thinking, look, there has to be another way. And, I didn't know if it was for me. And then it was in January, I heard the interview with Scott Pack, and he spoke so well because he sounded very honest. He had so much experience of all his time working in the traditional publishing industry. But then there was also things that came out of that I hadn't quite got my head around, like how long it really takes for a book to come out, and then understanding why it takes so long for a book to come out. And he was also he was very encouraging about self-publishing too, which I thought somebody who'd worked in the traditional world also being very supportive, that really sort of got my attention as well. And I remember him saying that he would only take on people that he felt were worth taking on. He wouldn't just take on if it at work as an editor. So I thought, well, do you know what? Having had, again, and I know you talk about it so much, but when you've constantly been told, I'd had some nice rejections, and I did, but when you're constantly told for years and years and years, it's very, it does, as your listeners know, takes a lot to, keep getting that laptop open and going back. And I thought, look, if he would be interested. So I got in touch with him, and I sent him, a little sample, and he came back to me. He said, actually, yes, I will look at it. And for me, that was just a huge breakthrough, just that. So then he took it, and then I got, it was a few weeks later, and I had his report. And bearing in mind, when you have all these rejections, you don't actually know what's wrong with it. So you're doing the same things all the time. So he gave me 4 lines of what he liked about it. That was great. Then I was like, 4 lines, that's more than I've ever had. But then, wait for it, I had 14 pages.
Oh my gosh.
Of what was wrong with it. And and also, but in the meantime, when I'd heard his interview, I also happened to then listen to another one of your interviews with Cleve MacDonald, if I got his name pronounced correctly.
We love Cleve,
and he was talking about Scott Pack. So again, it was all this kind of, I know Scott knows what he's talking about. I do, and I need to listen to him. So then we had a Zoom call, and luckily enough, because I am a journalist and I am used to very personal criticism, should we say, that's part of it. But actually, like, I had an hour-long conversation with him, and every single point I had to agree with. It made perfect sense, but I just hadn't seen it. So then I basically, it took me, I think, about 10 or 12 weeks. It was during lockdown. I basically rewrote it. Mm-hmm. And pretty much I kept all the characters. I think there are about 3 or 4, maybe a few more scenes that were the same. But for example, just the most obvious things, I'd set it over a week, and there was no real reason for it to be set over a week. So then I set it over a longer period of time, which made it all much more realistic. It sounds so obvious, but actually, and I was trying to, I don't know why I ever set it over a week. And so it was just all these things. And then I sent it back to him, and I was like, oh my goodness, what do I do now? And he came back to me, and actually, I think there was about 2 pages of what was wrong. So I felt like I had really gone in the right direction. And then just to have somebody like him, to have his kind of support and belief, for me, that made it, I was able to take the leap to actually publish it myself, if that makes sense. It's very hard to put something out there that's been so rejected, but then this version hasn't been rejected because it's sort of his version. And it really gave me the courage. So yes, I would never, ever have known about Scott Pack had it not been for your podcast.
Well, he's wonderful, and he's such a positive force for authors, be they indie, be they trad, be they hybrid, so that's, it's wonderful. We are just over the moon. And so your debut novel is The Pink Coffee Shop.
Yes,
and this
it
has been, like you say, 10 years. This has been a little while coming. Tell us how it first came about.
Yes, I will. So going back many years ago, when sort of you're like a naive 12-year-old and you can be anything that you want to be, I wanted to be a journalist and I wanted to be an author. And then I discovered that my favourite author at the time, I loved even then reading Barbara Taylor Bradford, and she'd been a journalist. And I thought, great, this is going to happen, sort of thing. So then I did become a journalist in television, and that brings its own challenges. But then sort of when I did that, and I was always talking about writing a book, and I can remember I would go when I was 18 with 2 of my oldest friends, and we'd go to a coffee shop that wasn't called the Pink Coffee Shop, but it was pink, and my favorite color's pink. And we used to discuss all our woes of teens over Diet Coke and carrot cake. And I'd say, oh, but one day when I'm a journalist and I write my book, and they said, oh, you should call it the Pink Coffee Shop. So that's sort of where the Pink Coffee Shop came from. But so it took me then, again, you'll know this well, 10 years. So I'd had my first son, and I kind of thought, but hang on, look, I've done TV journalist, I've become a mum, but I still haven't, done the author thing. And my husband, he just said to me one day when we were on holiday, for goodness sake, just write the damn thing, just do it. so I did. I was like, okay, I will. So there it started. So, and it's funny because when I listen to your podcast, it's, oh my goodness, I listen to your podcast when I go out running, and sometimes I'm like shouting, like, yes, because I've heard you say this, because, right, okay, so it took me probably about 18 months, and I wrote 100,000 words, and I did exactly what you say. I was like, the end, yay, I've written a book, I'm going to get my book deal now, that's it, that's all. And of course, if you only knew what you had to come. So then I sent that out again, very naively. I did have some nice agents, like nice response. Now I realize that was quite, it was good, but there was sort of a problem, nobody sort of quite took it on. Then I had an agent say, look, why don't you, I do quite like this. Would you consider writing it in the first person? So I was like, God, of course I will. And I was like, here we go. But actually by this stage I was doing early shifts for my job. I was at breakfast, reading the breakfast bulletins, and I then was going to have my second son. So, life was a bit busy as well. So it took me another year to write it in the first person. But I think it was actually slightly less than a year, but I genuinely remember pressing send thinking, here we go. This is it. This is going to be the moment, only to get a reply back to say, thanks for getting in touch. My business has been going really well since we last been in touch, but I've decided now to focus on children's books. So I'm not taking on any adult authors. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, right. You can imagine. Okay. So then I thought, right, let's start again. So, and again, this is why I think podcasts like yours are so good, because at the time I had no idea how normal this was. Because you think, oh my God, you just feel a bit ridiculous. And I didn't even sort of tell a lot of my close friends. So then I decided to start again. So I wrote my next book called The Secrets of the Gin Club. And I wrote this, and it was about a group of 4 friends, and one of them accidentally killed their husband. And so I wrote this, and this was about another year, or maybe getting on for nearly 2 years. And again, I sent it off, and I thought, right, come on then, I've learned a lot now, here we go. And again, I just got another load of rejections. And then they said, and then it was just at the time that Big Lies, Little Lies was coming out in the book, and it was all then being made. And they were like, it's really similar. I was like, oh my God, it is. But it was, don't get me wrong, it was nowhere near as good. So I thought, so what do I do with this? So again, I was like, right, I'm going to have to start again. So then I wrote another one, and I didn't quite get to the end of it. It was called The Juggle. And the premise of that is a husband and wife have to swap lives. And I got that. And then I had a terrible, as often is the case, a terrible family event. And it sort of makes your world just like stop, and you think, oh God, what am I doing? What am I doing? And it, again, all goes back to what I hear you talk about a lot. And it's like, are you doing this for a book deal, or are you doing it because you love writing and you want, I want somebody sitting around the swimming pool on holiday, can't put my book down. That was always for me what I would love that to happen. So then I thought, I'm going to start all over again. And I always wanted to start off with the Pink Coffee Shop. So I went back to the Pink Coffee Shop and I deleted it. And I just deleted it, and I just started all over again. I kept a couple of the characters, but it was completely different, and it was a different sort of feel. And so then I wrote that, and then I kept writing it, and then I sent it off to agents. And I thought, this time, if they reject me, this is when I started thinking about the self-publishing. I thought, I've really got to do something else now, because I can't keep on like this. And that's then when I heard the Scott Pack interview. And also, I used to work at the BBC alongside somebody called James Black, who works with Mark Dawson on the self-publishing formula. So I was listening to that, and I just I thought, what, this is, I think, the right thing for me. And it's incredible, isn't it? Because when these things come around, and then again, I listened to Angela Marston's and with her rejections on your podcast, and it was just like her was like just one yes and one way, and I listened also to LJ Ross, and you hear them and you think, hang on, it doesn't have. I'm not saying, I mean, I would love eventually to be a hybrid author. That's what I'd love to be. But to actually, I've worked for ITV and the BBC all my career. To actually do it for yourself and to learn about it and to understand it, this actually isn't just like the second option or second best. Suddenly I started to think, maybe this is actually the right way. And actually, this is what the universe has been telling me I should be doing, if that makes sense. It's strange how it comes out of all that rejection and frustration. But actually, it's like, hang on, I can do this. I can do this. And my husband is a journalist, and he's been really interested in it. And it's been lovely. We work together, and we study it, and we listen to it. So actually, I'm really happy it's worked out like this so far, if that makes sense.
It certainly does. And I think that moment where you deleted the book, which is my heart genuinely skipped a beat, because I've heard people do this, and I've never been bold enough to do it myself. I've got files of old projects, and I'll tuck them away somewhere, but they're always there. But to actually hit delete, and I think it's such a brave and incredible thing to do. But of course, when you start writing that book again, you're a different writer. You're a different writer to the Ellie Barker who wrote that first version. You've gone through the mill. You've learned so much, and you have a different perspective. So, I think that's it's a reinvention, really, isn't it?
It is. And exactly that. And then again, because then when Scott read it, I've never worked with, a professional. So for all those years, all these mistakes that you're making, you can only learn when you know what you're doing wrong. You can't particularly know until you sort of get the professional to look at it. So I'm hoping now I'm actually going to do it in a different order. I'm actually going to put out the Juggle next, and I'll be working with Scott on that. But I'm hoping I won't have 14 pages of what's wrong with it. Maybe if I can get it down to 8, maybe I'll be happy. But I'm hoping, because of what I've learned from him, just then the process of the editing with him, I'm hoping that will help me for the Juggle. And then by the time I've done the Juggle, when I do rewrite my next book, I'm going to rewrite them all, because like you say, I feel like I've learned so much. I have to rewrite them now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you haven't just rewritten a book and self-published it and popped it up on Kindle. Tell me about Flowerpot Publications.
So again, when I thought about this, and the idea, and you probably understand this, Mark, that like when you do work sort of in creative industries, like I do, in terms of being a journalist, and yes, you could go freelance, but the idea of actually having your own business and working for yourself, it never occurred to me that I could ever do this. And then when the whole self-publishing came up, and the idea that actually, yes, you can have your own little publishing company and publish your own books, you're like, actually, yes, this is what's having your own business and building your own brand, but most importantly, building a community, as you've done with the podcast, to build a community with readers. I thought, wow, this is amazing. So it was lovely, because it's just something I could just do on my own. I'm surrounded by boys. They're gorgeous. I've got brothers, I've got sons, but to have my very own, like, I love pink, I love flowers. So I thought, and I always wanted, years ago, I said I would live in a house called the Flowerpot and have 3 daughters called Rosie, Daisy and Lily. And that never quite happened. I had 2 sons. But I thought, hang on, so my characters in my first book are called Rosie, Daisy and Lily. And so now I've got my Flowerpot Publications. So again, it's all different ways dreams can come true. They just might look a little bit different to how you imagined them. So so now I've got my little logo. And so all my books I plan to write, for as long as I possibly can. I'll do as much as I can under Flowerpot, which is just a really nice thing. And I hear the Christmas parties are very good. So, I think, it's a nice little world to live in.
What I love about the Flowerpot Productions and your website, if you go over to folks, if you go to Ellie Barker Writes, and there is most of us have a lead magnet for our newsletter. It might be a short story, it might be an extract, but you've got something here called The Secret Diary of a Breakfast Television Runner.
Yes.
And first of all, I'm going to say, have you had it legaled?
Well,
how much gossip is in here? Because page 1, you've got a picture. It says "for your eyes only." I mean, this is catnip.
Yes, it is. Now, fortunately, again, due to my experience, and my husband is very involved in legal reporting, so we have an experience. So you have to read it. It is all true. It is all true what I've written, but I haven't exactly named people, if that makes sense. Brilliant. So I've done, So, but it's generally true, because I did start out as a breakfast TV runner, and my character in The Pink Coffee Shop is a television runner. So it was just a way of showing the readers I do know what I'm talking about. But yes, you absolutely, you cannot make it up. When you're making tea for people, you see it all. You do see it all. But yes, it was, quite the experience.
Wonderful stuff. So, having set up, at Flowerpot Publications and had your first book out there, you'd think that would be enough, but world domination continues, because at the time of recording this hasn't come out yet, but by the time you're listening to this, listeners, Ellie has a podcast as well called The Next Chapter. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, again, thank you. It's, again, listening and sort of being inspired by all the people I've listened to. I do understand, again, it's just a way of, you want to give your readers, if they're sort of going to be kind enough to read my books, just sort of try and give something back a little bit if I can. So what I thought was, as I'm in my 40s, I'm a mum. It's sometimes, not even just being a mum, being a dad or anyone, to when you go into a new world for the first time, it is frightening and daunting and challenging, and to actually just sort of pluck up the courage. Even it took me years to admit to a lot of my friends that say that I was doing this and being rejected. So I thought, as I start my next chapter as an author, that I would interview people who have already started their next chapter. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're authors. I'm speaking with, for example, a lady who's a single mum. She was a taxi driver and she became a murder detective in her 40s.
Wow.
Somebody, it's amazing. Somebody who ran a pub and then ended up having her own vineyard and things like that. It's just really all very different. I will be speaking to authors, but it's more of the case of like how you feel, like, and sort of knowing that we're all in it together. And actually, when you are brave enough to say, this is what I want to do, it's incredible how supportive people are. And it's really, and I know you have this in your academy, but it's really quite a special moment when you think, hang on, people, and actually the fact I've been rejected so many times, I actually think people warm to that a little bit more. It's like,
badge of honor.
Yeah, it is. And the lovely man who cuts my hair, he says, Ellie, nobody likes, an overnight success story. And it's true. You like to hear that there's been some struggles, because there normally are struggles if you're doing something worthwhile. So hopefully it will just I can just offer the readers just something, and even if they're not thinking of their own next chapter, but just something just to listen to and some interesting stories alongside my books. So yes, fingers crossed.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Well, this is it. I mean, folks, if you're listening to this and thinking, I need a next chapter in my life, well, hopefully Ellie will inspire you in the same way that Scott inspired her. It's all about passing it on, isn't it? So, Ellie, thank you so much for talking to us. Best of luck with The Pink Coffee Shop, with The Juggle, with all those books you're going to write from now on. And we hope everyone is going to be a huge success. And come back and speak to us again one day.
I will. And honestly, both you, Marks, really thank you, because you may not, I know you do know, but honestly, the work that you're doing really does change and inspire lives. So thank you very much.
What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperimentcom/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. Do you know, it warms my cockles, Mark, when I hear that the podcast has made a little bit of difference in someone's life. It's like,
That's
such a beautiful thing.
That's why we do it. It's why we do it. It's the best. It's the best thing about it. Absolutely the best thing about it.
It's kind of funny because when we started out, we knew that we had a mission to write a book. I could never have predicted the ways in which it would actually help other people. Like, we started to realize it kind of as we started to get into the podcast, and we started getting, our first email came in and we were like, what's this? Someone's actually listening. But to hear Ellie talk about the impact that it had in her career reminds me, and let's go bigger than just the podcast. This, again, it reminds me of why writing a book is so important, because when you write that book, you're inspiring others to write a book, right? We maybe helped inspire Ellie to get to the finish line with hers, but she's now written a book which is going to inspire other people who maybe have had a book sitting around for 10 years that they haven't finished. And I think, well, hang on a minute, if Ellie's done this, I've got no excuses anymore. I've got to dust it off.
Yeah, absolutely. And that thing of, because Scott, again, if you listen to that episode 252, link in the show notes, he doesn't take any prisoners, Scott. You know, he's a fantastic editor, but he's not going to, as with Shannon Mayer in one of our early episodes, she says, editors do you no favors by being kind. And she said she got 4 lines of what he liked and 14 pages of what was wrong. Right? You know, and a lot of people might have gone, okay, fine.
I got the message.
I gotta go. But no, yeah. Ellie dusted herself off, picked herself up. That's heroic. That is properly heroic, you know. And I think she's done everything right. She hired a great editor. She's got great cover art that's right for the genre. She's got a wonderful newsletter with a really good lead magnet that appeals to her readers. And she started her own imprint. She's treating it like a business. And she really reminds me a lot of, and I mentioned Nicola May earlier. She reminds me a lot of Nicola May. Nicola, now, if you go back to episode 180, and again, I'll put a link in the show notes, Nicola spoke to us briefly at the London Book Fair. And what Nicola has done with her series, Cocklebury Bay series, is nothing short of astonishing. And I see the same combination of passion and graft in Ellie. So I've no doubt that if Ellie keeps this up, you know, she's got a fantastic future ahead of her. And I think it's a great, as you were saying, this Ellie's one of our listeners. This could be any one of our listeners out there. There's no reason why it couldn't be you, dear listener, listening to us now, you know, but it's what she said. She said their dreams come true, but they look a little different to how you imagine them sometimes, which is totally true.
It is, yeah. But the thing is, to have a dream come true, first you have to imagine it. And that's the whole point. The fact that whether it's different or not is less relevant from the fact that it actually she got to that point that she wanted to and finished that book. I love it. I mean, in terms of that ratio, it's kind of an interesting one, isn't it? When you think about I kind of worked it out. It's a ratio of about 100 to 1. One good thing for 100 points of things to improve. But that's what you want. I mean, I would be really concerned. I mean, obviously you desperately want your editor or anyone to like your book and say, wow, this is brilliant. But actually a good editor, you don't want like 4 lines of things to change. You want a bucket list of because the more of that you get, the more opportunity there is to make it even better. And that's the thing. It's not about making it good sometimes, it's making it even better. And if we pitch it in our mind like that, it's just like they're there to hone us, to make it spectacular rather than pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if an editor does come back with, this is all fine, what are you paying them for? You know,
well, exactly, because nothing is ever 100% perfect. So, you know, no. I guess
I was going to say, you use absolutely the right word there, which is opportunity, which is any knock like that, any kind of criticism, any kind of feedback. Look at the opportunity potential to change and improve, particularly with editing.
Yeah, and this is a really important point that we've never really discussed on the podcast, is that I kind of find in my coaching world there are 2 kinds of people. There are people who get offended when they're given feedback to improve, and then there are other people who are just like, bring it on. What else? Give me more. And I've noticed there's 2 very different kinds of people. We tend to be the former, all of us, when it's a loved one telling us that we didn't quite wash the dishes as well as we should have done, or you're leaving a mess in the sink, Mark, you know, when you shave, or whatever it might be. Right? We take offense. It's the reason we've always said, the reason why you never ever teach your kids to drive. Right? You pay that money because it's an investment in your future lifetime relationship with your children. Right? And there's this thing about, so that's why you never go to really close friends or family and say, hey, could you give me some feedback on your book? Because it's just going to end in tears, folks, unless you have this incredibly wonderful relationship that Stephen and Tabitha King have, where they can do that, or Joe Abercrombie and his mum, and they can do that, right? But that's rare. That is not normal, right?
Very rare.
That's
unusual.
But the point is that when we go to an editor, or somebody that we respect because they've written something great and we know that they know this, they know their chops, right? We're more willing and open to take that feedback and say, okay,
this person's actually trying to help me. They're not criticizing me. They want what I want, which is to write the best book I can. So yeah, bring it on. Bring on the pages of Red Pen. I think it's we learn not just how to make the book better with each one of those little bits of feedback that we get, but we also are learning for future times when we might make the same mistake again, and we save ourselves over time. Marcus, you've worked with editors. Have you noticed that you're getting less and less of the same feedback around the same things, because you're basically refining it, right? And you're learning from it.
Yeah. I mean, I think like Ellie, first attempt at a proper novel, I reams and reams, this is wrong, that's wrong. And okay, right. You're bruised. You are kind of, oh gosh, do I just give up now? Is it hope, or is it a gift? This is a gift that I've spoken to someone who knows a little bit more than me. I'm going to take that on board and learn from that. So you do have to see it as a gift, and someone's taken the time to read it, give it focused attention, and give you some feedback, which is helpful. You don't have to listen to all of it. That not all of it is going to be great. But there's going to be stuff in there which is going to help you. And that I'm at the point now where I've got a procedure in place where previously I might have gone, oh, that's good enough. I'm like, no, we're going to stop. We're going to leave it. I mean, the number of versions I go through when I'm writing now, the number of checks and balances that I have, born from experience, just because I know what my bad habits are much better now than I did 10, 20, 30 years ago. So I tend to trip up less and less with the basic stuff. And now when something goes off to my agent or editor, there's usually 5 or 6 things they want to address or discuss. And that's great, because that gives you focus. And that is a proper gift when you can say, okay, this is fun. This character I've got a problem with. And again, no matter how many times you do this, you're never going to get it 100% right first time. So it takes time though. It takes time, tenacity, bit of a thick skin, get used to a bit of bruising. But that's what the life is.
Yeah, and here's a little secret to let everyone else into, is that when somebody gives you feedback, the reason they can recognize that as a potential improvement is because they probably have made the same mistake themselves and learnt from it. Or as an editor's perspective, if they haven't been a writer, they've seen that mistake so many times over. Like, you're not the first to do it and you won't be the last, but they've seen it so many times over. They're like, oh yeah, this is one of the classics. Okay, let's hone this one out. And so, don't ever take anything to heart as, oh, don't be wounded personally by it, because people can give you that advice because they've learned it themselves, and they too have had the same feedback at some point, and that's how they made the change. So, and one day, the irony is that one day, and I'm sure you find this now, Mark, as well, when you're giving people feedback, you're telling about the mistakes that you made 10 years ago, right? It's just the cycle of life, and it's how we all help each other.
Well, the other thing with writing is because, this isn't doing the same thing again and again. This isn't like, fixing if you have a skilled job, like if you need to fix a toilet or whatever, or you need to fix the heating or a boiler or something like that, that's a skill. But very often you're looking at the same equipment every time. When you're writing something, you're talking about the whole human experience. You're drawing on your own experience and the experiences of others. Every single time it's a different problem that you're tackling. And yet somehow you can make the same mistakes again and again. Or invent all new mistakes. So it's a different puzzle every time. And I think once you're reconciled to that and you accept that it's not going to be perfect first time, then I think you become a bit more zen about getting that kind of feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing I did with when I heard Ellie was on the show is I went to a website and I checked out her showreel as a news reporter and presenter. It was super cool. For anyone that doesn't know what ITV is in outside of the UK, it's kind of like the main commercial channel, isn't it? The main TV channel in the UK, next to like the BBC. And I saw this wonderful 5-minute montage of all of the interviews and things, the anchor positions she's had, and it gave me such an appreciation for the value of having met lots of wonderful characters in her work. And I was kind of curious as to, and I'm sure this comes through in her book, in terms of like, you know, one minute she's chatting with someone dealing with dementia and how they have to put their dishes in the sink to remind themselves that they've eaten, because otherwise they might not eat for 2 days. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. Like, you know, to experience that person's life in their kitchen, and then flipping to a crazy, zany kind of like some marathon, like telethon thing where they're raising money and doing crazy things. And so she's had such a great breadth of experience of meeting different characters through her life. And so one of the things that I kind of picked up from that is it's so important to do that. It's so important to kind of chat with the person on the bus next to you, or to ask stories about what your grandparents or your auntie or your parents did in their life, and draw from all those rich experiences, because it makes you a better character creator in some ways.
You have to be curious about people and about life. Right. I mean, we had this, we recently reissued the archive episode of Erica James, and Erica James said her sons would get mortified because she would just go and talk to strangers while they're on holiday, you know. So, but yeah, that kind of curiosity really helps. And I think it's why we see a lot of authors have a background in journalism or the legal professions, you know, because I think those professions are where you have a fascination with people's lives, particularly the secrets of their lives as well. You want to get behind the facade and find out what the truth is, and that's a good trait to have. You know, there's a fine line between being nosy and intrusive, but being curious. And I think, you know, people like to talk about themselves, and it's something I've cultivated, particularly working in publishing, because you meet a lot of great authors, and you know, you sometimes meet celebrities or whatever. And I've learned it's great just to, and on this podcast, just sit back and listen.
Yeah, I think that one of the dots just connected for me. We've always talked about how fascinated we are with how so many lawyers become authors, and very successful authors. Yeah. But lawyers, I guess, that the work that they do is they often, in certain types of law, you know, if they're conveyancing, maybe not, but in court cases where they're defending someone, or you know, dealing with a lawsuit, they're seeing conflict at its highest level, which we know is what drives a story. So they're living in a world of characters and conflict every single day, and having to solve the plot, so to speak, solve the problem and end the story. And that's possibly why lawyers make such good potential authors, maybe. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of doctors as well, doctors and nurses, because you're seeing
similar
humanity.
Thing. You're seeing
at its extremes, you know.
People come to you, like, how often you go to the doctor and you sit down and go, they say, how are you doing? Oh, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. All right then. Should we do that's it? Then off we go. Like every single person comes in, and with their varying degrees of problems. Like I always feel bad if I go to the doctor and I've got like a minor complaint, because I think, what if the person who came in before me had some major, like, life-threatening illness, and I'm here complaining about this little thing or whatever. And but so they get to also see this incredible swing of different stories, but everyone's like, it's concerning in that person's life. So again, conflict, drama, worry, fear, it's all there in the doctor's office. It's incredible. Yeah, I think maybe that there's something to be said for good. If you want to be an amazing author, like, go be a doctor or lawyer first.
Well, you don't
social
have to do,
worker.
The
list
social
goes
worker.
on, right?
Yeah, I think you just
Social
have to be
workers
curious. I think you have to be one of those people who's interested in other people, because it's all about putting yourself in their shoes. You know, this is one of the reasons we love writing antagonists, because we like to be the bad guy for a while. You know, we like to step into other people's shoes and see the world from their perspective. And that, for me, is one of the great joys of just setting up a situation, an impossible dilemma for characters, and saying, how do they solve that? How do they reconcile that? How do they find some kind of solution where there really is none? What sacrifices can they make? What can they offer the other person? And these are great challenges. They're not easy. So I think if you can enjoy that as a writer and just love hearing other people's stories, then it's all grist to the mill.
It is, isn't it? And it's all part of just absolutely having a fascination with the human condition, trying to work it out from our own perspectives and our own life, and then trying to understand it from everyone else's own perspectives and their own journeys. And I think that really is the core of what makes writing such an incredible pursuit, because it's not just the pursuit of telling a great story, it's also a pursuit of trying to work out this big picture that we're always struggling with or trying to get answers to. It helps us dive deeper in a really important way to enrich our own lives and understand ourselves better and make more sense of our own life, and hopefully kind of make the most of the rest of the time we've got here. So yeah, it's deep stuff, isn't it? When you start to peel back the onion skin, there's a lot more to it than just sticking some words on a page. It's only taken me 4.5 years to work that out. So Mr. Stay, well, thank you, sir. Certainly thank you to Ellie for inspiring everyone coming on the show, and also I just love the fact that she reached out to us and she told us about how much the show meant to her and how it actually changed her life in terms of her writing. Those are the stories, folks, that warm Mark and I's hearts. So if you have ever heard something on the podcast that's changed your life or something that you always remember, it's really lovely for us to hear what that is, because we know that people own things in a different way, and sometimes we don't see the obvious connection. So let us know how the podcast has helped, and we'll maybe give you a mention on the show. Or maybe, like Ellie, if your story is amazing, we might ask you to come join us for a chat, which would be fun. So Mr. Stay, social media.
Yeah, we've had lots of good news stories from our listeners, all sorts of good stuff happening. Angela C. Nurse, one of our Bestseller Experiment BXP team over on Facebook, she did her cover reveal this week for her book Jack in a Box, which is coming soon, a Rowan McFarlane mystery. When family is all you have, how far would you go to protect yours? So go and check that out on Angela's website. Steve Gowland. Now, Steve, you remember, was a regular on the 200 words a day challenge, and he's reaping the benefits now, in that he's just had an amazing book launch for he says best book launch ever in terms of sales, awareness, and promotion. He's increased his mailing list by 120% using Instagram. He also entered the Book Bloggers Novel of the Year award, and that's for his book Coven of Shadows: The Soul's Abyss, Book 2. So congrats on that, Steve. Big congrats. And we've had, we just said to people, what are your good news stories? Rhoda Baxter said the children have gone back to school and have time to write again. So let's not underestimate how huge that is in some people's lives. Yeah,
that's like the end of the summer holidays times 10. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Shell Vest says, I connected with a fellow experimate for daily accountability a month or so ago, and it's made a huge difference. It's nice to have the website to log word counts, but if I miss a day or two, the website doesn't ask how my story is going or commiserate about procrastination. My buddy's word counts and daily progress inspire me. Thanks again for fostering such a wonderful community. And that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. It starts, folks, with the 200 word challenge. That's what Shell's referring to there. 200wordchallenge.com. You go to the website and you just log the number of words you wrote every day. And it's just a really basic but very effective accountability check-in. But getting writing buddies, actually, interestingly, writing buddies is something we're launching in the Academy in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to have a rotating writing buddy every month. So you get to work with a different person, maybe in the same genre, maybe in a different genre. But the research that we've done of having somebody just to check in with and just say, crappy day today, only did 200 words, or amazing day, I wrote 600 words. And then to hear their story back, it just makes you remember that you're not alone in all of this. And it's a graft, it's hard work. And it is incredible. It keeps people going way beyond just having to kind of work on your own world. So yeah, congratulations, Shell, and great for being proactive and finding a writing buddy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm using the 200. I'm doing the first draft of the third, which is a Woodville book at the moment. So, and I'm using the 200 word a day challenge. I'm registering, logging my words every day, and I'm tweeting about it. So, come and find us. The hashtag is 200 words a day. I'm at Mark Stay on Twitter, or come to at bestsellerxp on Twitter to find us on there. We're on Facebook too, Bestseller Experiment, and Instagram at bestsellerxp. So come and say hi, drop us a line.
Absolutely. We do read every single email that comes in, and we try to respond to all of them. So come and say hi. Tell us what's happening in your world. Celebrate your books.
Yeah.
Give us your dream declarations, whatever's happening. Make a commitment today to do something that's going to move your book forward this week. Whether that's signing up 200 words a day challenge, whether it's writing the 200 words a day, or whether it's dropping us an email, or just telling your friends that you're going to go for this. Make a commitment to yourself and make it happen.
Or you could be like Kate Francis Baker on Twitter, who is at Blue Viola, who said, I'm repairing horse rugs while listening to the two Marks on the bestseller experiment, giggling about their days working in video stores. Very excited to listen to Adele Geras as well. So, you know, that's a first. Horse rugs.
Horse rugs. Horse rugs.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I know we have people who do knitting, they walk the dog, they do the washing up or whatever.
Washing up,
so yeah,
running.
But horse rugs, yeah, beat that, folks.
Horse rugs. Oh, yeah. Actually, that's a great. The randomest things you do whilst listening to this podcast
Keep it
every
clean.
week. Keep it clean. But let's have. If we can get enough of these in, we'll do one an episode of. And if you send us the randomest thing you do whilst you listen to the podcast, we'll give you a mention.
Excellent.
And the funnier the better.
Absolutely.
Brilliant stuff. Have a great week, Mark. Good luck with everything at your end, and good luck to everyone out there in the writing world. May your words come freely, and may your book be amazing. So it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye.
Goodbye.